Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Elephant in the Room. How are you, Taranjeet?
I'm very well, Mui Han. I'm exceptionally well. It's nice to come into the last week before Raya. The
Yeah,
festivities, whatever little festivities that are there, are now slowly coming up. The jingles are coming up on the radio, which is always nice. So yeah, it's good. It's very good.
and I think the activity or the economic activity seems to be returning, and at least this week seems to be like buzzing crazily. And I went out to do a how to say a pack back for dinner last night, and the coffee shop had like easily 20,
Checked
30
out.
packs. Yeah,
Yes,
although the tables were socially distanced or isolated, but each table still had 4 or 5 people enjoying their meals. And wow, this site has been like gone for the last 2 months, and suddenly, wow,
absolutely,
in that sense.
absolutely. Okay, so let's start off with today. We've got an exciting episode planned. What do we have today, Mui Han?
So as we were explaining yesterday, I think we wanted to do a continuation to our series on corporate restructuring and change management. I think this is one area that both of us, yeah, passionately vested in it, as well as we've been helping a lot of organizations and clients to actually work on these two key areas. And I thought it would be good to be a background against what we've been discussing with all the other different guests, as well as our current scenario and environment. So if
Absolutely.
if maybe you can help to refresh our audience, our last two episodes on this subject and how we arrived to here. Right?
Where we are. Absolutely. So thanks for that, Muyan. And so it's very clear. The writing is on the wall. It's not only at a local level, but it's also regional. There is a rethinking of how business is being done. There's a rethinking of how we go to market as entrepreneurs and as business owners. And that entire business model, that entire operating model is now very much up in the air, and it is a question of pivoting. So today, a very close friend and colleague on the CMI board asked a very interesting question, and I'm hoping for him to come on board one of these days, where he asked, "What is this whole pivot discussion about? Is it about me going digital? Is it about me entering into an entirely new form for me to work at the office? What's the deal with this pivot?" And this is something where the operating model now has to take that into account. What we've done over the last two sessions, the first session was to talk about the pre-restructuring phase. What are some of the discussions that we need to take into account? What are some of the questions that we have to ask? The second session that we had about 10 days ago was around the during phase. Essentially, what is playing out when we now start talking about the actual restructuring program itself. And that was then divided into what we had earlier, linking the strategy to the operating model. And today we'll be talking about the operating model to the structure. How does the structure need to look like? How do the roles need to look like even before we start thinking about the people? Muihan?
Great. So maybe before we get into the business of discussing about corporate restructuring as well as change management, let me quickly just do a quick shout out to our audience who have just tuned in. First, we have Mr. Srijit Bhagavan from Perth. Okay, thank you for your support. We also have my good brother KJ Ko. Hi. Jack Tan, who just finished his show. Jack runs a daily Take 5 at 5 show just before our show. Thanks for tuning in. Ranjit is also watching all the way from Malacca, I believe. Thank you for coming in. And our two favorite people, Zorab, welcome back. Dr. Mike as well from Singapore. And today we also have Arisaran Anjunan, if I hope I get your name correctly, joining us. Welcome to Elephant in the Room. So yes, I think maybe we should start from the perspective of, I just quickly maybe just share a diagram Let me just pull out the banner. So if you can see here, typically we have key components in a change process. We have put outline 5 down there in the center, which is strategy, structure, people, process, and technology. So as Taranjeet was saying, we already have covered strategy quite a bit in the last 2 sessions, or in the last previous 2 sessions, especially talking about the need for it, the direction, as well as what is the operating model to begin to start with, to initiate the change process. So today we are very interested to see how that translates into the structure, as shown in our diagram in that sense. All right. So with that, maybe worthwhile for us to maybe re-explore what change management is in that sense. So
Yes.
For those who are not too familiar, maybe just wanted to quickly just say that in the process of doing structured change management, it is an alignment of tools, techniques, as well as a process to manage a business outcome that is different from what is currently formed. And this business outcome could be an implementation of a new business direction. Some companies also do it during a system change, a technology change, or technology adoption, as well as a culture change. So they may want to drive a different culture. A lot of times it's high performance or innovation culture. So there is a structured process, including tools, including techniques, including framework to actually execute these changes in that sense. So collectively, that's how they are known as change management in that sense, right?
Nice.
So maybe you can help us, Taranjeet, to transit maybe from our last discussion, which was the operating model. Let's say the companies have decided that. How does that then move into the discussion of what would be the org structure to support that?
Sure. So there are a couple of things that we have to be very clear on. One is linking this to why are we moving in a particular direction. And that has a direct correlation to the type of roles that are playing out. And roles essentially here would probably mean, for some people, the lay guys, you're probably looking at jobs. What type of jobs are we looking at? Why are there these type of jobs playing out? Jobs are divided into several categories. And if you think about the lowest level, at the lowest level, it is more around the area of doing activities or doing transactions. These are transactional related jobs. So for example, if I am going out there to answer the telephone, my entire job is around telephone answering, the etiquette around that, and what have you. And that's one transaction or one activity. I don't do anything else. I just look after that. If I'm looking after knowledge management center, my entire focus is on making sure that that particular library is done in this way. It's done in a very neat fashion and the likes. But if I now start to move up and graduate up the job ladder or the role ladder itself, you suddenly find that from the transactional side, we've started to move into the area of looking at the transactions and the management aspects of that. It's become a little bit more complex. The type of thinking is now no longer 1 + 1 + 1, but it's actually the summation of that. And that's where managers now come into play, supervisors of team now comes into play. If we now start talking about it at an organization side, I may have not only functional, but I also have cross-functional or cross-departmental teams that are now coming in. As I move up that level a little bit, it now becomes a lot more complex. I'm now running divisions as an example. And right at the top, it becomes enterprise-wide. That means I'm now talking about the company and the rest of the market. And that normally is what is reserved for, by and large, what we call as C-suite. These are the chiefs of the organization, whether it be the CHRO, the chief operating officer, whether it be the chief HR officer, whether it be the chief IT officer, the CIO, and the works. And then obviously you have the CEO and obviously the board. Now, what happens is when we now start thinking about the jobs, how future ready are these jobs versus the demands that are expected of the organization? And that's why it's absolutely critical to make sure that we have a concrete understanding of the operating model. And what does that then mean as we translate that operating model into the future related jobs that we're looking at? Mui Han?
So when you raise this, and in all my work, especially either even in this restructuring piece, or even sometimes we do this for compensation purposes, I think this piece is very aptly known in the HR world as job analysis or role clarification, leading towards job evaluation. And job evaluation, of course, create the basis for compensation and reward structures in that sense. I always find this, and maybe like to invite the audience to actually join in the discussion as well. I always find, especially our local companies per se, as well as even the government-linked companies, maybe want to hear from you as well, Taranjeet. A lot of times when we talk about this piece of restructuring, and then when we come to say this is a strategy, let's decide the org chart, you'll find that the key consideration is now creating roles and positions for the particular individuals that we already have, Although as the external consultant, we keep saying that, don't think of who the person is, don't think of, but somehow or rather, consciously or unconsciously, when we sit down and draw the boxes in the structure, you'll find that there's all these created roles which always come into the conversation. Maybe just want to get your perspective and also how we could mitigate that, especially in this time of need, where it is not the organization's perspective to maybe lay off or retrench, so they try to keep everybody, but at the same time when they try to change their business, they have all these people in their mind to see which to put already, even before thinking of the strategy and the proper structure.
Good point. And therein, I think, lies the challenge of doing the right thing for the organization, or am I doing the right thing for the people? And there is a nice intermediary, but at the end of the day, it is about the organization. It is about the sustainability of the organization. And therefore, when roles are now crafted, the roles need to be crafted with the future-centric position in mind, always, because the sustainability of the organization is absolutely critical to whether we have a job or not, or whether the organization is significantly far more important than the individual, because without the organization, there is no such individual. But you could also argue without the individual, there's no organization, and that's correct too. But my point here that I'm trying to put across is the betterment of the organization is what we are looking at as a collective whole. So is it about the individual's position, or is it about a future-centric role that we're now looking at doing? And at times like this, it is also very clear, and we've been hearing this all the way from Dharman Sivalingam right from the beginning, including Hira Singh and the likes. What we're also hearing is jobs are moving. They are moving up a level. Those transactional related jobs, those activity related jobs are slowly disappearing. Why? Because they are being replaced by systems, they're being replaced by artificial intelligence, by robots, whatever that means, which therefore means that there is no longer a demand for these jobs. The jobs now have shifted up one level. And then the question comes in, do I now consciously make space for these bunch of individuals? Well, actually, no. And that's the difficult conversation that we need to have at a C-suite level. Why? Because the organization has now needed to evolve itself. Long time back, we talked about the area about having it being demand focused, not supply driven. If we look internally first, it becomes very supply driven, and that's not about pivoting. Mui Han?
So I think I know we don't want to talk about people, but I think the next piece, which is the people, always impact this piece in my experience. And a lot of times when we talk about the difficult situation where the C-suites have to make that roles have changed or the business have changed, changing the business model changed, looking at the roles have changed in that sense. There's always this consideration, of course, to say that if we are, I mean, we are a caring organization that we want to provide for all our people. And even in whatever new change, we also want to open these positions or vacancies up for our internal people to look at it first before we actually look at externally. That is in spirit, but in practice, you always feel that, or at least I observe, a lot of times individuals are very habitual in nature, and a lot of them, in fact, if they've been doing a similar role, especially those task driven for the last 10, 15, 20 years, getting them to reskill actually to another new level or new paradigm is almost next to impossible in that sense. I mean, don't talk about others, even yourself and myself, if you ask us to get into the IR 4.0 game and start to learn how to code, I think we will die looking at the lines and probably won't move in that nature.
Yeah. So allow me to respond to that. Now, it's not about all of us being Python programmers. You have horses for courses, like they say. And if I am a racehorse, it is a particular type of turf that I'm looking at. If I'm a plow horse, it is a particular type of turf that I'm looking at. And you can't mix the two together, quite obviously. And I don't think that's what this is about. But what we are talking about here is at the evolution part of the organization, are we now seeing a shift of how the organization is working? And that's currently more important in my mind. And yes, I agree. We have individuals who have been doing the same thing for the longest of time. It will be difficult, but you know what? I have absolute faith in human nature to say that if we need to be adaptable, we will, because that's the survival that we have. The question now comes in is, what about that 5% or the 10% that says, I cannot and I will not? What happens to them? And for that, for me, the answer is very clear. What happened to the dinosaurs? Let's talk about that. So it's very, very clear there will be a phasing out simply because these roles no longer exist. So if you are sitting down there waiting for things to happen, you know what? You got a long time coming and you're going to wait a long time because it ain't going to happen. So what are we now doing to shift the game to assist the organization? And yes, we are here because of our people, but we need the people to ride with us. Otherwise, we are only as strong as the weakest link that we have. And that's a common saying that we hear. Mui Han?
So why I raise that is because it deals directly or deals directly with change management, and a lot of times you find that in a change program, one of the key early tasks is to really look at the sentiments within the people, looking whether they become a resistance to the change effort. And a lot of this, I think I clarified in the last session to say that there's a lot of focus on the rational thinking part of it, but least focus on the emotional part of it. And that's where the trouble starts, or the resistance starts, so to say. But I think you are right to say when push come to shove, definitely we as a human race, we are always very adaptable. And I mean, and people have shown to come to rise to the occasion to do the necessary. But I think it is only the form of manner if we given a choice. There's always lot of pushback. So in the area of change, we always confounded the two. Either we shepherd you accordingly with all the right environment, all the positivity to actually come to terms with the new reality for you to move on. That is ideal. But in many cases, you'll find that actually it's actually quite challenging to really push through. And there is a big top-down or demand to get it done ASAP and so on and so forth. So that is also one of the things that we also been looking at. So maybe just I'm cognizant that we got a few inputs. Maybe let's just do quite a few of them. Let's start with Zorob's. Okay. So demand-driven model is fearful for many in most organizations today. Are filled with workforce with obsolete skills, let alone shortage of available future talents. Do you agree? What is the solution enabling the Okay, so Zorab asked tough question. You want to take a shot, Taranjeet?
Yeah, could you just put that on? Could you just put that on? Yeah. So, I think Zorab, this is a brilliant question, and it's a question that is impacting a lot of us as business owners. And you're right in the sense that we have obsolete skill sets, and just look around. If we are running around with a sizable business and we're using IT to manage our procurement and we're using IT to manage our inventory control, also rather Excel sheets rather, we have something wrong. Why am I using 4 people when I could only use one? Why am I using 10 people when I could only use 2? So you're right. You're absolutely right. The question then arises is, what was the onus on me as an employer to ensure that I lift the game with you? Have I sent you for the required type of upliftment or enhancement? If I haven't, then it becomes rather awkward because it starts with me as the manager. It starts with me as the people manager. Now, if I'm expecting you to run and I've not taught you how to run, it becomes a little bit difficult as well. So there are obligations on both sides, but likewise, there's also an obligation on the individual to say, I am willing to come in here to provide you the best that I can, as long as you are able to give me the infrastructure requirements as well. And that's where this becomes a two-way dance. There's a tango that is playing out, and it takes two to tango. So to your point around what is the solution in this demand-driven, is very clear. The requirements are there. Have I done enough to let you know as an individual employee, or have I kept mum, expecting you? But then the question then turns around. In today's day and age, am I beholden to the employer for my own development? Or do I take charge of my own development? Whether or not the employer is giving it to me, am I investing in myself? Whether or not the employer is doing it for me? That's my response to Zorab's question. Mui Han?
I have a quick one on this, and I think one of the, I mean, we can talk about multi-factor causes per se, but if you look over the last 10 to 15 years, I think generally employment-wise, we are in quite a stable environment and always been what they call an employees market to a certain extent. And as a result of that, you'll find that in many organizations, and I think you did a study on this, Taranjeet, to say that the level of competency between senior management and the next level is such a huge gap in that sense, right? And of course, there is multi-factor to that. But if you look back at the individual level, individual reasons for that, we will have to conclude that somehow our people, besides the senior, the next level or the next 2 levels down, have not uplifted themselves to play at a certain level that increases. So that is very prevalent. If you look across compensations studies, I think that is a quite clear-cut impact and say. So, I mean, I wanted to bring that perspective in to say that somehow I personally feel as a market, we have not raised the game enough and we've been comfortable enough to get by, you know. In fact, this period is something that is not been felt in many years. I think easily 20 years in our environment, we've been quite comfortable in most employments in that sense. So as a result, that becomes an issue as well, in my opinion.
So, and let's go on to Chu Bun's note here, where he makes a very good observation. Sometimes companies lose a good employee and creates a bad manager when companies are forced to promote someone due to seniority or time-based promotions. Companies are responsible to get the said employee ready for the new role. And you're absolutely right, Chu Bun. And I think 2 things are playing out. Whilst we are responsible as business owners to bring our employees along with us. It also works the other way to say, are the employees capable to lift their game? Otherwise, it'll be like the proverbial duck with the water being poured on its back and the water just pours off. Am I going to invest this amount knowing full well that the employee may not necessarily reciprocate? In which case, I rather, and this is a difficult conversation, I rather let you go and bring in a new breed of individuals simply because the capabilities are not there. This also drives home a very interesting point around where are we playing on our high income economy. We have been talking about that for the last 15 to 20 years. And yet we are playing not at the top line, we are actually playing at the middle, if not the lower. Why am I saying that? Look at the way our wages are being structured. Look at the way in which we are treating our level of employees. We're just barely, and if you see the pawn shop lines, and I mean pawn in terms of providing jewelry rather than anything else, let's get that very clear. So if you see the pawn shop lines playing out, it says a lot about where we are in our evolution as an economy and in our evolution as a nation. And I now have very difficult questions that I'm now asking myself. What did we not do right to lift the game? Could it be we were not hungry enough? I don't know. Mui Han?
I just wanted to quickly show what my good brother KJ raised, and he say that if you talk about comparing it regionally, the movement of talents to our neighboring countries is a good indicator. And if even you don't talk about the brain drain, you just compare to the economies around us. Of course, Singapore is always a bad comparison because they are so far ahead. But if you take Indonesia, you take Thailand, you take Vietnam, you take Cambodia, and you see the kind of progress they've been enjoying for the 5 to 10 years before this is truly, truly leaps and bounds in comparison to our country. I mean, and that itself has a lot of indicator in that sense. I wanted to just raise points raised by Dr. Mike before we conclude. So it says new approaches are needed for change management post-COVID, more critical to invent or create the new future and willing to let go of the past. And I think this is true. And I wanted to just add on this point to say that one of the biggest barriers that all of us suffer individually as well as a business is our past success. So whatever that got us here always is the one that blinds us from going further, because we always say that, don't reinvent the wheel, don't change the perspective. As long as you follow this methodology or you follow these key steps, and you will get your success. So for a lot of successful people, successful business out there, a lot of times the challenge is their past success is holding them back. And in this environment where it's almost like reset to a new norm, that is where it's very hard for them to let go and to abandon what they've been doing well in that sense. Okay, so let's just quickly run through, then we will do a wrap up. So just to follow on Dr. Mike's point of future and steer the company to comfortable shores, all right? I think that is greatly looking at. And also Zorab say that knowledge and experience segment valuable skills are also left. Yeah, I think that is very, very key per se. And lastly, from KJ, retention is not there, then good luck. Yeah, correct. Well said. So maybe quick one, 3 key things, maybe if you can summarize, Taranjeet.
Sure. So I mentioned this earlier. We need to ensure that the structure now is future centric, whatever that may be for your particular sector. The structure has to be in line with where the evolution of your business is heading towards, and that will inevitably have an implication on the quality of people that you have to take the business to the next level. But let's not talk about that in this segment. Let's just focus on the roles. Once we identify what the roles look like, we at least have some level of criteria for measurement that we can use against the people when we start talking about assessments or we start talking about profiling. That'll be in the next segment. The last takeaway for me is, as a nation, we started to talk about, have we done the right thing for our people? And the earlier, maybe 2 decades, 3 decades back, we were an Asian tiger.
Yeah.
We were running almost double-digit GDP growth on a year-to-year basis. What happened? And I put it down, and this is the elephant in the room that we shy away from. I put it down to the fact that we are no longer as hungry as what we used to be earlier. And once you are no longer hungry, chances are you tend to slow down a little bit because it's being given to me. And if it's being given to me, why do I need to rush and run around chasing things? And this now will come to a head, especially in today's radically changing environment. Because as you rightly pointed out, it's not the same as before. Mui Han?
So thank you for that, and I think we sets up very nicely for our future discussion on this topic on part 4. So I'm very excited because people is always the most interesting group of people segment to talk about, and we got a lot of good examples to share with that. So maybe just wanted to just share what we are doing next tomorrow, and tomorrow we're having another very special guest. And we have this lady, Farah Nazura. So just to give some context about Farah is actually not a fresh graduate, but she's been working for a company for less than 2 years. I think it's 1 year, 8 months. So after our great success, I call success with both Isian and Elizabeth last week, we thought that we also wanted to use this platform, Elephant into Room, to help more young people. And we have she has gracefully agreed to be on our show, where she will ask both myself and Taranjeet a few questions. But at the same time, we will invite again all the audiences to come in to help her and also to give her perspective. So her concerns are mainly due to any young professionals about career, about future, about how to manage her bosses, her colleagues, and so on and so forth, as well as having gone through work life for maybe coming to 2 years now, slightly shy than 2 years. What are the things that play on her mind? I think especially in this moment to move forward. So for all your experienced professional managers out there, we once again appeal to you to join us tomorrow. Keep us to support us, to give this young lady advice that she may seek. And as well as if you know any young professionals out there, anybody working less than 2 years, do get them to come into the show as well, to join the show, to follow the show, so that we can also share things that is relevant to them. And they can also post their comments or questions for us to actually explore, right? So that's happening on tomorrow, Wednesday. And on Thursday, all right, we have a young person, another young guy by the name of Shaikit. So Wong Shaikit is a young entrepreneur. So Shaikit or Shai actually runs a social entrepreneurship. So we wanted to just switch it from employment then to entrepreneurship. So on Thursday itself, those of you who are running a business, we invite you to join us now to give a live stream mentoring to our young entrepreneur. So we have a very exciting next 2 days coming up. So we really hope that you can come and join us in that sense. So with that, we thank you for your participation, for your questions, and for your inputs. Once again, the show is nothing without all your support, and we hope to see you once again tomorrow. For those who are stuck in traffic, drive safely, sit back, relax, don't force the jam, listen to us as you tune off. And also for those who are breaking your fast, selamat berbuka puasa. We see you again tomorrow.
Thank you. Goodbye.